Hey everyone, welcome to the session. Thank you for joining me, and Happy New Year. Welcome to the first live sacred space of 2022. I wish you all great health, happiness, prosperity, and all that you desire. Happy New Year. And as always, I'll start by saying I'm honored to be with you here uh, in this time of sensitivity and uncertainty. And I look forward to sharing time with you here in our shared sacred space today. Uh, and so the things we want to do in our shared space and time together today is to, we'll set sacred space first of all, as we always do. And then we'll have our talk this month on our overall topic. And the topic for this session will be the healing of the feminine and masculine life forces within us, right? The healing of the feminine and masculine within us. Then we'll have a short exercise, and then we'll go ahead and close sacred space. So, hey, Gary.
Hi.
Gary's like fiddling around with the tech on her side. So we'll go ahead and set sacred space now. And to start that process, I will just say that what we would like to do here, our intention, is to create a space which is devoid of fear, threat, and control in order for us to open to higher guidance from within our own selves, however we define that. Flashes of intuition, insights, hunches, a muse that guides us, however we define that. So a safe sanctuary space where we can all relax and surrender with no feeling of danger or threat, so that we can partake of the nourishment, the emotional nourishment, and the spiritual nourishment that comes from being in sacred space together as a group. And in opening sacred space today, I will propose, as I always do, that we all follow the four principles of proceeding in sacred space. The first is confidentiality. Standard Vegas rules: what happens in sacred space stays in sacred space. Now, of course, because we're not in person, we are online. The stream is public, the replay will be public, etc., etc. So the way we handle confidentiality here is via anonymization. So if you would like to be anonymous, you don't have to be anonymous. The way you would do that is by coming into the Crowdcast stream, going into the edit profile feature, and then changing your username to Harry Potter, Mickey Mouse, what have you, and then continue interacting from there. So that's confidentiality / anonymization. The second principle is that there is, as much as we can muster, no threat, no controlling, no hostile language, but even if it's well-intentioned. So no fixing, no curing, no tough love, no, this is hard, but it's going to be good for you. We don't do that here. There's nothing intrinsically wrong with that kind of stuff, but because it is intrinsically of threat and control, right, even well-meaning, it instantly brings us out of sacred space. And as we always say, there's nothing wrong with profane space. It's just a different kind of space. But there are certain things that we can do in sacred space that we can only really get done in sacred space. It's like there are certain things you can only get done when you're at the bank or when you're at the grocery store. So they're at the airport, right? So those are special controlled spaces so that we can get certain things done. And here, in exactly the same way, we create a sacred space so that we can get the things done that you can only get done in sacred space, among which is opening to higher guidance within our own selves. So no threat, no controlling, no fixing, no tough love. We are holding space here for each other to be however we are. So if you are afraid and anxious, we hold space for that. We don't try to change it. If you're happy and relaxed, you're like, how can you be happy and relaxed in this world? The world is on fire. But if you happen to find yourself to be happy and relaxed, we hold space for that, right? And we don't try to change it. We don't try to poke you into uh, becoming more um, anxious or outraged. Uh, we can do all that in the profane space, but in sacred space, we take each other as we are. Okay, and to be okay with that, to hold space for that. So the third principle, which is a corollary of the first two, is that there is no commerce, right? So nothing may be sold here. I can't sell you anything. Gallery can't sell you anything, because when you are sold something, there is an intrinsic threat, right? So if you would like to have better health, here's this vitamin that you better take, right? So it's a sort of well-meaning threat, but there is a threat. If you don't take this vitamin, you won't get the good health. And again, nothing intrinsically wrong with that. But because we're trying to create a space that is categorically right, devoid of fear, threat, or control, we try as much as we can to refrain from that. And that covers recommendations and suggestions as well. If you're like, or if I'm like, oh, there's a great book you should read that will fix that right up, right? We refrain from that too, even though I may not be making money or getting any advantage. Because regardless of the benefit to me, it's still an implied, kind of very softly veiled threat. So we don't do that here. We don't do commerce. We don't do suggestions or recommendations. As much as we can handle it, right? We're still human, we're imperfect, and that's okay. But the point is that we are here for your energy, not for the things you bring, right? We are here for, in a manner of speaking, the essence of what you are, not for what you do or provide. We're not here for your value add or your function. We're here for you, right? We're here for you. So no commerce, no recommendations. And then the fourth, but last but not least, is that there's no expectation of participation, right? So there's no pressure to do anything. You can chat or not chat. You can ask questions or not ask questions. You can stay the entire time. You can bail anytime you like. You can watch the replay, not watch the replay. You can invite your friends or not. There's no pressure to do anything, again, because the nourishment comes from the held space, which is devoid of fear, threat, and control, and your presence and attention from what you are, not from what you do or provide. And that includes whether you even stay in the session or not. Okay. So those are the four principles I would propose that we follow to the best of our ability. And all of us together doing that for ourselves and each other in a group will tend to amplify that effect, so that there's all this like overflowing. It's like a potluck of sacred space, emotional and spiritual nourishment, which is why it tends to be so nourishing, which is why it tends to be so nourishing for me, for Gary even, which is why we continue doing these sessions. So anyway, this is what I propose. And if you are not okay with that, right, that's totally okay. There is no fear, threat, or control to get you to come to sacred space or stay in sacred space. That's totally okay. But we are about to cross the threshold into sacred space. So if you're not okay with that, we will just pause right now to give everyone a moment to withdraw if they would like. And we'll still be friends. We'll still catch up with you later in profane space. If you're on my email list, I'll still send you emails, right? No worries at all. Okay. So I'll just pause here to give everyone a moment to make their selection. Okay. All right. Good. And so now for the rest of us, we will now move together into our shared sacred space. And as we cross the threshold now into our shared sacred space, I will just remind everyone, including myself, of the four principles we would like to observe in this space to maintain it, to make it strong. Confidentiality / anonymization, no fear, threat, or control, no curing, no tough love, no commerce, no recommendations, and no expectation of participation. Welcome to our sacred space, everyone. Happy New Year. Happy New Year. So our topic for this session will be finding wholeness through the feminine and masculine within us. So in this month's mythic brainstorm that I do with Gary, my editor, we came across a fairy tale from the Grimm brothers collection yet again, which led us to a bunch of insights and just wonderful reflections on the nature of the harmony between inner masculine and inner feminine within us. And we'll explain what we mean by those terms as we go forward. And as the two interact, insights on the lifelong journey of healing and wholeness, right, that leads to the integration of inner masculine and inner feminine within us as co-equal forces within us. Both of us, not both of them, distinct, powerful, covering different functions, and ideally blended in this like beautiful balanced blend of being a whole healed person in the world at your full power. Okay, so Gary, are you there? Do you want to come up on screen? If our tech is working. Oops. Oh, okay. She dropped off the invite. Let me invite her again. Let's give this just 1 second.
Hi, Artie.
Hello. Hi.
Hi. Can you hear me okay?
All right.
Can you see me
Yes,
okay?
yes. Everything's great.
Been a bit of a tech puzzle.
The dreaded restart
Right.
5 minutes before session.
Yeah.
All right.
So
So assuming your connection holds, do you want to tell us
Yeah.
about the story you picked?
Yeah. So I mean, it was kind of fascinating that we came back to Grimm's Brothers. We just did Grimm's Brothers last week, but I went about looking and hunting everywhere, different traditions and different kind of fairy tales, but I was brought back and led back right to Grimm's Brothers. And what's happening now with it, because we've read so many stories from Grimm's Brothers, is I'm kind of starting to see patterns, symbols, motifs, and saying and being able to kind of guess that, this is probably what the story is about.
Right.
But what is also really fascinating to me is I still can't guess what the theme of the story is about until you actually then, start reading the symbols and say, I think this is the story. I think this is what it's about.
Well, you have your guess and I have my guess. It's not that mine is correct.
So it's lovely to be able to kind of pick and trace motifs in the story. And there is a chain of motifs that come across in our sessions. They're almost like there is a bliss path of the life sacred space itself, like it's been following its own path. So you could see that, and especially when I go back and go through the sessions that we've covered until now in chronological order and go by the dates, and I see that it just unfolds in almost like a planned order, and I hadn't seen that before.
I mean, it might be interesting at some point, not to give us both more homework, right? But something we do when we do dream work with advisees is after a few months of all these dreams flowing through, something we recommend is to go through and just do a bullet point listing of all the dreams by title, okay? And then next to it, it's rare that you can just encapsulate everything in one headline, right? Because like a big dream is like, it's almost inexhaustible. It's like one of these fairy tales. You can read it across, centuries and it still continues to give fruit, right?
Right.
but you just put your best shot at what the headline kind of insight of that dream was.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you clip down the list of insights in chronological order,
Mm-hmm.
right, this like larger pattern emerges of like, oh my gosh, I've been, I have been, it is the case that I have been led along this
Mm-hmm.
kind of circumambulatory labyrinthine path.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm still being led. I don't actually know what the destination is, but it seems like everything's circling around a certain center.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's certainly true of our sessions. We continue to come back to inner masculine, inner feminine, bliss, the muse, grief. Yeah. So
Right.
that might be interesting to do at some point. I don't know if we do it in a session like this, but we can brainstorm.
We don't know. We don't know.
We don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Hmm.
the story is called The Crystal Ball.
Okay.
And again, I think we've covered this motif so many times, but I'm still excited.
Let's do it.
It feels like a whole new story. All right. So
Okay.
this is Grimm's fairy tales, and the story is called Crystal Ball. And it goes like this, right? So there was once an enchantress, and she had 3 sons, and the brothers all loved each other. But the old woman, the mother, didn't trust them. She thought they wanted to steal her power from her. So she changed her eldest son into an eagle. And so he was forced to live in the Rocky Mountains, flying in great circles in the sky. And he could only assume his human form for 2 hours daily. And the same thing with the second son. The enchantress turned the second one into a whale. And so he was condemned to live in the deep sea. And he was never seen except when occasionally he would spout up a great jet of water in the air. And so it was, the third son saw this coming, right? He thought he would be changed into perhaps a raging wild beast, a bear or a wolf or something. So he ran away. He ran away from his mother's castle. And he'd heard that, the king had a daughter who was bewitched, and she was imprisoned in the castle of the Golden Sun, and she was waiting to be set free. And whoever tried to, set her free had to risk their lives. And there were already 23 young men who had died a miserable death. And now there was just one more attempt to be made. And after that, no more attempts allowed. And so this young man, who was quite brave, he had no fear, he made up his mind to seek out this castle of the Golden Sun. And he traveled a great deal. He came a long way and he couldn't find it until by chance he came to a great big forest. And he didn't know the way out of it, and he didn't know which way to go. But then he saw in the distance 2 giants who made a sign to him to come closer. And so he did. And then they told him that they were, brothers quarreling about a cap. And they wanted to decide that this cap belongs to one or the other. And they were both equally strong. So neither of them could get the better of the other, so they didn't know what to do. And they said, well, small men are cleverer than us, so we want to leave the decision to you to decide however you want about who owns this cap. Right? And the young man was puzzled. He said, why are you fighting for an old cap? And the giant said, well, you don't know, but it has magical properties. It's a wishing cap. So he said, so what does it do? They said, whoever puts it on can wish himself away wherever he likes. And in an instant, he'll be there. And the young man said, well, okay, give me the cap and I'll go a short distance off. And I'll tell you what, when I call you, you must both run a race towards me, and whoever reaches me first has the cap. How does that sound? So the giants agreed. And the young man started to walk away from the giants, and he put the cap on. And after a short distance, he thought, oh, how I wish where the golden, castle of the golden sun was, and how I wish I could see the king's daughter. And that's it. In a moment, he found himself standing on a high mountain before the gate of the very castle he was seeking. And so he entered, and he went through all the rooms until in the last room he found the king's daughter. But he was absolutely shocked by what he saw, because she had this ashen grey face, she had wrinkles, she had bleary eyes, she had deep red hair, and she looked absolutely hideous. He said, "Are you the king's daughter? Because I've heard so much about your beauty. The whole world praises it. And what is this?" And she said, "Well, this is not my true form. And human eyes can only see me in this state of ugliness. But if you were to look for my form in the mirror, my reflection, you would see the truth." And so she gave him a mirror, he held it, and then he saw, the reflection of the most beautiful woman on earth. And he also saw how tears were flowing out of her eyes. And he said, "I will set you free. But I just want to know how. It doesn't matter if it's dangerous. I don't fear danger, but I will set you free." So the princess told him how it was to be done. She said, "He who gets the crystal ball and holds it before the enchanter will be able to destroy his power. And then I will resume my true shape and I will no longer be imprisoned." And then she said, "But so many have already died to achieve this. So I just feel sad that you should encounter a similar fate if you're not careful enough." And the young man said, "Well, nothing can keep me from doing this. You just have to tell me what I should do to accomplish this." And the princess says, "All right, so when you descend the mountain, you will find a wild bull standing by a spring. And you must fight this bull. And if you have the luck to kill it, a fiery bird will just spring out of this dead bull. And in the body of this bird is a red hot egg. And in the egg, there is the crystal ball, which lies as its yolk. But the bird won't let the egg fall until it is forced to do so. And then if it happens to fall on the ground, the egg will just flame up and burn everything and itself. And with it, the crystal ball. So all your troubles will have been in vain. But this is what you must do." So the young man, with no hesitation, he went straight to the spring, down the mountain, and he saw the bull, which was, snorting and bellowing at him. And after a long struggle, he fought with the bull and he plunged his sword right into the bull's body and it fell down. And instantly a fiery bird, just as the princess said, the fiery bird came out of it and was about to fly away. And this is the beautiful moment. The fiery bird just flew away, but it was intercepted by this very young man's older brother who had been turned into an eagle. He happened to be passing between the clouds. So he saw this bird and he swooped down, chased it away to the sea, and kept striking it with his beak until the bird was forced to let out the egg. And so then the egg was about to fall on the ground, but it didn't. It just happened to fall in a hut, a fisherman's hut, that was right by the shore of the sea. And the hut was about to catch fire, just did catch some fire. But right at that time, there was a huge wave, the sea wave, that rose and, rose as high as the hut itself, and then doused the fire by just all the water dumped on it. And this was the whale, the other brother. He'd come swimming right to the shore, and he'd brought the sea waves along with him, and he put out the fire just in time. And so the young man saw this, and he came running to the spot, and he looked for the egg, and thankfully, it hadn't caught fire. But the impact and just catching the fire, the shell of that particular egg had just cracked open, but the crystal ball inside was intact. So the young man took this crystal ball, went to the castle, and held it before the enchanter. And this is the lovely moment. The moment, he held it in front of him, the enchanter saw it and said, "Well, now that you hold the crystal ball, I no longer have power. And the castle is yours. I declare that the castle of the golden sun now belongs to you, and you're the king of the castle. And likewise, your brothers will gain their human form, and the princess will gain back hers." And so it happened, right? The brothers came back to life, and the princess in her room in the castle was back in her beautiful, splendid, glory of her beauty. So the younger brother, when he walked back into the room, he saw the real princess in her real form. And he presented her with the crystal ball, and they both exchanged rings, and they became king and queen of the castle. And that's the end of the story. Artie, would you like to come back on? Hi.
Hi. Yay, that was great. Thank you for reading it again.
Thank you.
So I'll start with my usual first question, which is, where did you enter into that story? Where did that story strike you the most?
So for me, it was really like reading all these symbols, like I said, from all the other Grimm stories that we have read so far, starting with the crystal ball. Sometimes it's a crystal ball, sometimes it's a golden ball, sometimes it's an apple, but there's always something that is just shining right there in front of you as the reward, or as something, the treasure that you have to seek. So that was one thing. And the other thing that really stood out for me is, in one of the Russian folk tales, there is this motif where Ivan goes in search of this treasure again, and he has to, cut an oak tree and then find, and out jumps a rabbit, and when you kill the rabbit, out jumps a duck, and when you kill the duck, there is this egg inside it, and you break open the egg. You have all of these series of transformations that happen, and then you find this wholesome little treasure inside it. So when I saw that thing, I said, "Oh wow, there is that motif coming up again, and it's saying something, because this has come up so many times in so many readings." And I just love that. But the absolutely mind-blowing thing for me in this story is how you have this enchantress who kind of, curses or imprisons her own sons. She has sons, and she does that. And then there's this enchanter who holds the feminine, the princess, captive. So it's almost like, so there's a mirror reflection going on.
Right, of the two sides, right.
Two sides, right? That is what I think I found most fascinating.
Yeah, it's very well done. It's very well done, yeah.
Yeah. So we've not seen that motif so far, at least. I don't know if there are other stories that show that, but that's something that's absolutely new.
I agree. I mean, that's the thing that once you started talking about the mirror images between the enchantress, the feminine, the first feminine image that we see, the sons, and then going to the enchantor. It was just this structural balance that really, made the whole sort of, this is a story about rebalancing inner feminine, inner masculine, that like kind of jumped out at me as well. Yeah, I agree. The story is just beautifully balanced in that way. Should I make some of my comments from the notes?
Yeah. So
Okay.
if you could just also, if anyone's joining new, I don't know, how do we read these fairy tales, and how do we do this mythopoetic reading? I think that would be helpful. Yeah.
So the first thing we should probably say is that around here, what we do is we read these stories mythopoetically. Fairy tales, myths, dreams that our advisees will bring to us. And even happening out in the world, in our lives, in the news cycle, right? You can read all these things mythopoetically. And what that means is mythopoetically is kind of just a fancy way of saying that we basically read a story or a narrative or any kind of happening in dream or in waking life, where we regard every major actor in the story as being symbolic of a distinct and different part of our own inner selves. That's it. That's the simple sort of version. Right. So in this story, the enchantress is a symbol of a part of us. The sons are each a symbol of a part of us. The enchanter, the bull, the crystal ball, all symbolize different parts of us. Now, it's important to note that taking the mythopoetic lens is just one possible lens, right? You can take a more logos versus mythos, logos, like logical, linear lens where you say, well, this is an allegorical story. And the moral of the story is there's that finger wagging, right? Where we come out of the sacred and someone's trying to sort of beat a didactic lesson into our heads. You should be this, you should be that. And each of these stories, as we know from our childhoods, right? When parents, grandparents, uncles, aunts would read these stories and say, well, the moral of the story is don't be selfish, be a good person. That's fine. That's just an alternate lens to use on the same treasure of a fairy story that's been passed down through tens of thousands of years at this point. But it's not the only lens, right? So the mythopoetic lens says, rather than saying, oh, you should be more like the enchanter, you should be more like the whale son, the eagle son, or whatever, we say all of these are symbols of different parts of us, right? So I am one person, but I have many parts. I have eyes, ears, heart, liver, lungs, right? And on a good day, right, they all work together in harmony. They're not fighting each other or trying to bash each other's brains out. They are in harmony because they're all in the same boat together, right? We're all on the same team. And so when we read these stories, they are like these archetypal operating manuals, if you will, where we start off with all these cast of characters. We hit the play button, right? We let the story unspool, unwind. We let the video play out, if you will. And then you want to make note of who's doing what to whom. What are the balances? What are the imbalances? What are the mirror reflections of, in this case, masculine and feminine? And what do we learn about, the nature of the mechanics within us by watching this diorama, watching this narrative of the story and interplay of all these parts? Okay. In this story, there's a clear interplay between the masculine and the feminine, right? And the story, as it plays out, leads us to insights about the details, the mechanics, right? The logic, the physics of how inner masculine and inner feminine within us come back into reconciliation, right? So this story tells us something about the workings of our own inner self, okay? Now, a quick note about the masculine and feminine. The way we teach it here is that it's not a gender thing, it's a life force thing. So we're very careful to use inner masculine, not inner male, right? Because male is more gendered. And the way we think about it is that each of us, as human individuals, we each have both life forces within us. We all have an inner masculine and an inner feminine within us, regardless of our external declared gender. Okay. The key function of the inner feminine is twofold: nurturing, right, and vision. Right. So the feminine is the holder of higher vision in our life. In the Greek system, the muses are feminine. That's not an accident, right? On the masculine side, the key function of the masculine is also twofold, which is protection, boundary control, protection, right? And manifestation, going out into the world, protecting us with a fence, but then going out and, claiming more land so that we can fulfill our vision, manifestation. And so the goal of any personal human growth, healing, development, what have you, is for me as an individual to have my inner masculine and my inner feminine to come into conjunction, to have full union. And the union is ideally harmonious, consensual, co-equal, and co-amplifying, co-stimulating, right? And integrated, blended, all the rest of us, right? And the ideal situation is when that happens, you become fruitful. You have literally a happily ever after. Right? You are able to follow your bliss. So in every happy ending of a fairy tale, the prince and princess, the correct prince, not the evil wizard, and the correct princess, not the false evil stepsisters, right? The correct prince and correct princess get together, they recognize each other, they marry, and they have happily ever after, right? So when that happens, that's not a political statement about like marriages between a man and a woman or not, right? It's just, these are symbols of forces within you, right? Regardless of your gender, you have an inner masculine and inner feminine. And when they finally find each other and integrate, you are fruitful and you multiply. You have happily ever after. We're not necessarily talking about biological children. This is all within you, right? Your inner fruitfulness, your productivity, your bliss, your generativity, your procreativity, right? So if you're an artist, you're prolific. If you're a writer, you start like all these novels start like flowing out of you, et cetera, et cetera. Right now, when you think about these four functions, ideally you have all four functions in full flow of the two on the feminine and the two on the masculine. Or just take a step back and think about how you would be as a person moving through the world, right? Having all four powers at full power and fully integrated. So let's just go through the list, right? So on the masculine side, you have the powers of protection, boundary control, holding boundaries, not being a people pleaser, right? Protecting your own energy so that you feel safe. And then within the safety of your boundaries, you have the full power of nourishment and nurturing, emotional nourishment, emotional nurturing. So within my boundaries, I don't feel lonely, right? I'm filled and nurtured within myself. So I don't need to go around outside looking for someone from the outside to fill this empty hole within me, right? And nourish me and hold me. I hold myself, I nourish myself. And then once you are safe and fully nurtured and protected, right, what do? Right? When you feel that content and complete, you naturally look to the next level, higher vision, right? So you're safe within this kind of self-sacred space within you, right? Just on a day-to-day, everyday basis. And then you open to higher guidance, right? The sort of higher feminine, the muse comes down, gives you vision. It comes as a form of nourishment. When you realize your meaning and purpose in life, you feel filled, right? I mean, you're going to go out and do it also, but it's like, regardless of whether it happens or not, I see like what the purpose of my life is. It's very nourishing. And then with strong masculine, right, you have the power to not just hold boundaries, but to expand outside your boundaries to manifest this higher vision out in the life of the world around you. Right, that is the ultimate quaternity: protection, nourishment, vision, manifestation. It's a foursome, and in many traditions, world traditions, the self is a quaternity. The compass, the full compass is 4 directions, and then actually, the 5th direction is the one in the middle, the sort of central axis, the axis mundi, the axis of the world, the quintessence. Right, in Latin, it was called the quintessentia, the 5th essence. So the 4 directions, and the 5th is the middle, the essence of the whole thing. So when you have all 4, you have that quintessence. So anyway, so with all that, you look at this story. This story is like an operating manual, a kind of business school's case study, if you will, about how to get that done, right? So when you know this is the ideal, then, right, what I've just described, the natural question, I don't know about you, but my natural question is, well, that's great. I want one. How do I get one? How do I get there? Right? How do I get there? And every single one of these fairy tales and myths can be read as moralistic. You better be a good person and keep out of trouble. But they can be also read mythopoetically, which is how to get there from here. Right? How to sort out your inner elements and life forces to get to this like quintessential sort of ideal. So in the story, let's step through the story and see what it tells us. So in the beginning of the story, we have, voila, a quaternity, right? You have the mother and the 3 sons. So you have 4. Now in fairy tales, especially in the Grimm stories, and you can apply this to your own dreams as well. At the initial position, time equals 0, right at the beginning, you look for where the imbalance is, right? And given the imbalance, you can then expect certain things to happen as the story unfolds, hopefully, if all goes well. For instance, many, many months ago, we did the Hansel and Gretel story, right? You start off with a family, 2 parents and a boy and a girl. The mother dies, all right, and the stepmother comes in. So it's not saying like step parents are bad or anything. It's just like within your own self, there is an original that is transformed into something different. So there's something missing around the feminine, right? So this issue with the feminine is then resolved through Gretel, through the witch in the forest, through the moon. These are all aspects of the same inner feminine. So so you expect in a foursome 2 masculines and 2 feminines, 2 sort of higher level parents and 2 sort of emerging children level. Okay. Now this is not a commentary again on marriages, man and a woman, or parenting. This is all within you. It's just symbolic. So here, when you see that there's an enchantress, you expect an enchanter. You expect a boy and a girl, right? Everything is balanced. But in this initial position, we don't have that. We have 3 masculines to 1 feminine, lopsided. There's a missing father. And then there's a mother who is in deep distrust of the masculine overall. She looks at her 3 sons and it's like, you're just like your father. You're all like good for nothings. And the mother feminine is estranged from the masculine overall. So she does not trust her own sons, right? So here, the 3 sons, the enchanter is all the same inner masculine. And the daughter, the princess, and the enchantress mother are the same inner feminine. Okay, and so and again, this is not a social political commentary about single moms or any of it. This is all about the life forces within you. So the enchanter and the 3 sons are different aspects of the same inner masculine. This is wholesale pushed down, and brilliantly so in this story, pushed down across the 3 realms. Right now, I don't know if Gary can do this from her phone, but she'll typically put links to the different stories and other sessions from past, so you can cross-reference from the replay, right? And I think we can do that after the story if we need to. But when we talk about the three realms, it's the regular realm here on the ground, the upper realm of the sky, the spirit realm, and then the lower realm, which is either underwater or under the ground. Right, Poseidon, Neptune, in the Greco-Roman system, was the king deity of both the undersea and the underground. Right, he was in charge of earthquake as well. And then the Plutonic sort of underworld was one more level below, right? So here, the three masculines, one masculine is pushed to the spirit realm, another is pushed to the underworld, underwater realm, right, of the whale. And then one is just on this, would have become a beast, right? It's very clear, like a bull, hint, hint, that's coming later. But it's just exile, he runs off. So all three are exiled in a way, but the third one escapes, okay? So what you expect from this initial position is a healing, right? Because we know the ideal, it's this foursome, balance, masculine, feminine, and working in harmony. This foursome, the mother and the three sons, all estranged, banished, is not that. So the action of the story is, how do we get from here to there, right? And each one of these stories is like, forgive the capitalist reference, a business school case study. It's like an HBS, Harvard Business School case study. How do I get wholeness, the ideal wholeness, from all these different starting points? Hansel and Gretel, the sort of seven swans, the Princess and the Frog, right? Sleeping Beauty, Snow White, the Handless Maiden. These are all different starting points, case studies, where we're not at that ideal. And when you watch the stories unfold and bring us from point A to point B, where you get to the ideal, how they got there tells you a little bit something different about the workings of your own inner world, right? And we gain insight and nourishment and golden apples, right, from those stories about the golden apples as well. So in this case, the feminine is in control. She's angry and raining holy terror on the masculine, right, on the emerging inner masculine. So what you would expect just from this beginning of the story is some kind of reconciliation with the masculine, spanning across the three realms. And the title gives the whole thing away. The title of the story is The Crystal Ball. So right from Grimm's story number one, the Frog King, we have this motif of the golden ball. We know from Plato that the self is a sphere, a circle. And so when you're trying to get to masculine and feminine together, right, the symbol of that full togetherness is this golden or crystal ball. That is the center of the center of the center, our deepest inner self, right? The yolk within the egg, within the firebird, within the bull, that everyone's like questing for, right? Gary, I think in the Google Doc that we share on this, I have a link to the SoundCloud Frog King story you can post to. So if you would like to hear my original telling of the Frog King, Grimm Brothers number one, the Princess and the Frog story, from like probably 10 years ago at this point, Gary will put that link up as well. Okay. So the crystal ball, right at the beginning of the story, the title, tells you that this is a story where wherever we start from, we're going to get to this inner masculine, inner feminine, healing, wholeness, and reconciliation. So that's in Grimm fairy tale language. That's a great email subject line. I want to click on that and read the story. So the first thing we run into after that is that the third son escapes. The third son escapes. Now, you can never really fully banish or kill any part of your inner self. But if we could actually do that, we wouldn't need healing. We wouldn't be in pain, right? So like, if my liver gave me trouble and I got mad at my liver and I just cut it out and threw it away, right? And I was fine afterward, that would be the end of it. I wouldn't need healing, right? But I cannot live without my liver, right? So I need to reconcile with my liver. I need to reconcile with my lungs. Even though I pretend I don't have lungs, you can still see me secretly breathing when you're not looking, right? So these parts of us, inner masculine, inner feminine parts of us, are work in exactly the same way, right? You could say, let's say I'm a girl, and in this patriarchal society, family culture, they tell us girls should be, you know, selfless and put others' needs before ourselves, and demure and not have any sexual desire that we show, and not too talkative, right? And as whatever unique human girl you happen to be, you're like, well, I'm actually all of those things, and I have to stuff all those parts of me down, right? Otherwise, I'm going to get in trouble. I may not have economic or social security, sort of safety. I may not have physical safety if I don't act in a certain way. So, all right, fine. If that's what you need to do, that's what you do. You get through it. But those parts of you never go away, right? If you could actually cut out these parts, we wouldn't have any issues, but we would also be zombies. We wouldn't be true divine human beings, right? And in later life, they come back up, often with vengeance, right? So as much as the enchantress is angry, she can never fully banish and do away with the masculine. Some whiff of it, this third son always escapes. Okay, so he goes off on this path of healing, and he realizes what he needs to do is to reintegrate with the feminine by breaking the curse of the masculine. Right, so he goes all the way to the Palace of the Golden Sun, and he realizes to really get all the way through, to get the crystal ball back, it's not just fighting against the feminine and conquering the feminine, the evil feminine. Oh, woe is me, right? It's going full circle to the other side and realizing that the masculine is also holding down the feminine, right? It's like in the US when, we say, oh, it's a patriarchy. And then you have all these men who say, no, it's actually a matriarchy. And it's like, okay. And it's like, well, you have all these single moms raising their boys, and the boys, sort of grow up in terror of their moms, and so it's actually a matriarchy, and we're fighting against that. And it's like, on the one hand, it's like, well, good point. I can see that from your very localized personal experience, which is valid. But then you go back to the larger question. It's like, why are all these single moms, sort of running out? Some of them choose to be single moms, and many of them have not, right? And you think about sort of power imbalance in society, where it's like, yeah. Anyway, there's all kinds of so you can talk about seeing it from one view, where it's like this evil mother pushing down the sons, which is its own very valid reality. But when you go out to sort of look at the big picture of how do we sort of fix all this, right? How do we heal all this? How do we come back into the golden ball of like the two in harmony? Because we cannot just be estranged forever. We will both like wither and die on the vine, right? You find that on the other side, there is this mirror image thing happening, right? Where the enchantor is holding down the princess. Okay. So we need to break both curses. And so this very first symbol we encounter out of the mother's realm is in the forest. The forest is a classical symbol of the deep, unexplored realms of the self. That's why all these fairy tales happen in the deep, dark forest. You go to where it's not civilized within you. You go to where it's very dark and you have no idea what's even in there, even though the forest is a part of you. The forest is a part of you. And the very first image we see is the image of these two giants, okay, which are typically a symbol of the profane, because when you're standing in front of a giant, you don't feel sacred, you feel fear, threat, and control. The giants, as opposed to the Asgardians in the Norse story of the golden apples that we did a few months ago. They are very powerful, very strong, kind of cunning, but not really big picture smart, right? In the Greek system, it's the Olympians and the Titans. The Titans are the giants, right? We know the Titans are giants because there's no reason why the word Titanic needs to mean physically enormous, right? Like the Olympians fight the Titans. We don't think of Olympians as being physically enormous. We think of Titans as being physically enormous. When we have a ship named the Titanic, it's huge. When we have a ship named the Olympian, we think of it as being sleek and graceful and perfect and beautiful, not necessarily gigantic. So the Titans are giants. These giants within you, so these giants are a symbol of a part of you. And these are parts of you ruled by the profane, by fear, threat, and control. Right? In a profane society, we are typically obsessed with winning at all costs, even if we have to cheat. And size, bigger is better, more is better. Everything is linear, up and to the right, never coming down. Progress is linear, not cyclical. Everything's black and white, binary. Everything is in duality. It's not non-dual. And there is no higher vision, right? And in this realm of the giants, so when you see giants, it's like, okay, I expect duality. I expect black and white, no in between. And here you find it. So they're all fighting over this cap of higher vision. This is the cap that transcends, body, that can take you anywhere as fast as the speed of thought. And they both want this, and there's no in between, right? There's no subtlety. The giants don't, it doesn't even occur to the giants to say, well, maybe we can have a schedule and we can share. Maybe you can tell me where you want to go. We both agree. We lock arms. I put on the cap and we both go there, right? There's just complete stalemate linearity. It's other words, legalistic, fundamentalist, right? There's no looking at the overall image. It's just whatever the word says, this is bad, this is good, and that's what we're going to hold to in this sort of white-knuckled kind of manner. So this is a stalemate without reconciliation, right? The complete opposite of the golden ball, prince and princess happily ever after. And so right here, and this insight alone is like worth the cost of admission for the whole story, but this is just the beginning, which is why this story is so beautiful. One way to reconcile, right, that this story tells us, is to hold space for the stalemate. And then the third thing will spontaneously emerge, right? When you're in a stalemate, your vision is blocked, right? It's like you can only see the two options. You can only see the two giants. You can't see a third option. So when we advise advisees, when we work with advisees, people are often like, I can't decide whether to accept the job offer with more money or the job offer with more prestige, the giant of money or the giant of prestige. I don't know. And they're like, Artie, help me decide, right? And then they keep talking and it comes out that, well, which will make you more happy, more money or more prestige? Well, like neither one will actually make me happy. I don't know that that's on the table, but these are my two choices. I don't know what to choose, right? And you're like, okay, so as the referee here, right, the one being asked to sort of help make the choice, money or prestige, you hold space for it, you sit with it. Should I take money or prestige? In this example, like what emerges would be a third question, which is, why can't you be happy? In other words, are you even in the right industry, right? So either this job will give more money, this job will give more prestige, neither will make you happy. So the larger question is, why are you even doing any of this? Are you in the right industry? Is this even what you want to do, right? Neither of these giants has vision. They do not know what they want the cap for. Right? So I give you the cap and you go get more money. What is that going to, well, a priori, it's not going to make you more happy. So why do you even want the cap? And you, prestige, why do you want the cap? What is even the point of all this? Right? So there's no higher vision as to like what I really want. And what the young man does, what the third son does, is he goes and he faces the black and white choice, and he holds space. Because he says, I agree to be the arbiter. I agree to be the referee. The referee of a soccer match or a tennis match is very much involved with the game, right? But is not a participant on either side. right? The chair umpire of the tennis match is not uninvolved with the game. You almost can't have the game without the umpire, right? They just don't care which side wins. They are like holding space for the entire sort of event, right? And so he holds space for the game of, in this case, the race between the giants. Okay, and what comes out of it symbolically is not giant A or giant B. It's the third thing, which is, he puts the cap on. It's not clear if he's being cunning or if he's just like taking out his like stopwatch to time, in good faith, puts the cap on and just to hold it. And he's like, okay, okay, stand there. And then he has this thought, gosh, I wish I was at the Golden Palace. And then zoop, zoop, he's over there. Okay. And the larger symbol here is that allegorically, in terms of moral of the story, we could say, well, don't be dumb like a giant. Don't trust anyone with your cap. It's like, okay, I guess that's one insight you could get from this. But a higher level insight is that the giants are a part of me. The cap is a part of me, right? And this third sun is a part of me as well. And when you look at the three, right, who ideally will get the cap for the highest vision of the entire kingdom of which the giants are a part of? Obviously, it's the sun. Because he's the one who's going to go out, not for money or prestige or whatever sort of linear thing. He's the one that's going to go out and actually heal the entire kingdom, right? Where the enchantress doesn't win, when the enchantor doesn't win, but this next level of masculine and feminine come together, and there is full fertility, virility, procreativity throughout the whole kingdom of you and your inner world, right? That's the ideal. And how do we get there? It's not by decree where you're like, the giants must give up the cap. It's like he goes in, he faces this black and white choice, this thing that is either, red or blue politically, or sort of conservative or liberal or whatever. And he holds space for it, and the third thing emerges. Now, in your actual regular human life, right, this whole process, just this giant part, could take 3 minutes, 3 months, or 3 years, or 30 years, right? It's the overall pattern. It's not a specific timeline. And you may go through multiple variations of this giant transcending the two choices pattern. In your career, right? Money or prestige, and then the third thing. In your relationships, this kind of person or this kind of person, and then the third thing. With your body, right? Do I treat my body this way as an instrument? Do I treat it as a donkey to be like whipped, or is it a third thing? Right? When we do the body program, that's one of the things that comes up. With your finances, with the flow of money as a life force in your life, A or B, and then a third thing. Right. So typically, if you think something breaks down to either A or B, it's black and white. There's no in between, and you have to choose. You are in the mindset of the giant, and you will be stuck forever. And the key detail here is that there is another part of you that steps in where you literally hold space for these dual forces of fear, threat, and control. So you bring in a little bit of a salt of the sacred into this fully profane situation, and then this third thing emerges. For those of you who have done 7-day healing and other healing work with me, typically the part that helps you transcend is exactly the part you have vilified and exiled early in life. So the lost board member is this third son, right? All three sons are lost board members. The lost board member of the spirit, the ego, lost board member of the underworld, the emotional sort of depths, the whale, and then this active in the world lost board member of the third son. So you're like, where do I get my third son? It's like, go find your lost board member, do the interview, and bring your A or B thing to the lost board member. And you're like, well, that's terrifying, right? If you're that girl that we talked about earlier in that example, it would be your suppressed sexual desire. It would be your talkativeness, the fact that you are talkative, you're not quiet and demure. you're actually selfish. You don't want to put everybody else's needs ahead of yourself, and you like stuff that down. Well, that's the part you bring up and face them with this A or B test. Do I marry this person or that person? And this part of you is like, neither. You idiot. Why is it just these two choices? Come on, let's go, right? So that's why, I don't know, healing sometimes is just really fun. When you get down to that level and you have these realizations, you're like, okay, all right. And it's been in front of you the whole time. Okay, so that's the giants. Then he finally puts on the cap, he gets to the castle. There he finds the other side of the inner feminine, the mirror image of the enchantress. Okay. She is the same inner feminine as the enchantress. But because he has been able to transcend black and white, A and B, the two giants, he sees the deeper form of the enchantress mother, which is this princess, which on the surface is ugly and terrifying, and evil, and again, beauty, right, in these stories is not actual physical beauty on the cover of a magazine or Instagram or whatever. It is inner beauty. It's the inner truth, right? So I'm a man, right? I have this gorgeous princess, gorgeous, beautiful princess within me, right? That I need a certain mirror or power of reflection, which is mirror, to see beyond just the angry inner feminine, to see the true inner feminine beneath that. Okay. So she is being suppressed by the enchanter, evil inner masculine. Okay. And again, the way to save her, and this is a beautiful detail, is first to realize that she doesn't need saving. She is intrinsically perfect as she is. Right? Her true inner nature is unblemished, which implies the true inner nature of the enchantress mother is also unblemished. Right? The only issue actually here is our inability to access that deeper core to see her true nature. If you bring a mirror, the mirror is a part of you. Your powers of reflection. You will see this. Right? This is not physical beauty, but the true essence, the quintessentia, right? The quintessence of this part of you. You just can't access it. So the question is, how do we access it? In like healing, the lost board member is never actually lost; it's just suppressed. Your liver has not left your body; it's still there, and we have some work to do to sort of do the reconciliation and recovery. Okay. In the same way, the evil enchanter, who is masculine, is also the same as the three sons. Right? These are all different aspects of the one inner masculine. So there's the general rule is there's only one inner feminine and one inner masculine, but each with 1,000 different faces. Okay. And so at the end of the day, nothing is actually amiss. Everything is in full integrity already. But to heal, we're going to need to go through some transformations of the existing things. Right. So the main transformation that happens is that the third son needs to go out and kill this bull. Okay. What is a bull? So this bull I read as a kind of subtle version, next version of the dichotomy of the two giants. Okay. And I don't just mean the bull's two horns, A and B, one on the. I mean, you could read it like that. That would be fine. But there's a deeper symbolism of the bull here, where a bull obviously is masculine, because it's a male cow, right? A male bovine, but it is the masculine of a feminine inflected animal, right? So the cow, the bovine, is more intrinsically feminine, right? Ask any Hindu, right? A cow is a symbol of like a universal mother. And so when you have things similar to a lion, right? A cat is intrinsically more feminine in sort of just human cultural tradition. But when you have a male cat, a lion, right? It is the symbol of integration of inner masculine and inner feminine. right? Where so for me, even though I'm a human and I'm male, right, I tend to have strong vision, right, and I attribute that to my inner masculine side. And for me, literally, a lot of my vision comes from my own mother, right, and sort of her um, kind of penchant for like inflecting and accenting the more higher vision of any given thing we're talking about, right? So I literally picked that up from uh, my feminine side, my mother's side, even though I'm a guy. So I have sort of inner masculine and inner feminine within me. So a lion has both, and a bull has both. Um, and so this bull is a symbol of inner masculine and inner feminine blended into one symbol. Okay. But still, you need to kill it. And so killing in a dream or a myth is a symbol of transformation. So I'm not at the level of the two giants anymore. I'm at the level of the bull, which is the giants left and right, masculine and feminine, have come together and they are integrated, but I'm not at the full crystal ball level of integration yet. Okay. And so, how are we doing on time? Let's just keep going. And so, and one of the sort of subtle details is that we go down to the bull, and the implication is that the bull is hostile to us. It's hostile to us, right? So the enchanter and the enchantress are fighting with each other at the two giants level, but now they're together, right, in this bull, but they're hostile to us. So we need to do one more level, one more step of transformation. There's some symbolism where the bull is specifically beside the spring. A spring is sort of related to a well, right, where you go down and get the water of insight from the underworld, right? So in the Princess and the Frog story, the Frog King, the golden ball, right, the crystal ball equivalent, falls down the well, and we have to integrate the three realms in order to access the golden ball. So we can't go down and get it. Even our father, the king, can't go down and get it, the princess's father. We have to rely on the ugly lost board member exile of the frog. And the frog goes down, gets the golden ball for us, and then we have to have integration with this frog. Okay. So the spring is related to the well, except the water is shooting out of it. You don't have to go down. But it's also, the bull is protecting it. So if you want, so in a similar way, it's like if you want to go down to the well, you need to get past the frog or convince the frog. If you want to access the spring, right, of this next level of transformation, you need to get through the bull. So he successfully transforms, kills the bull. And as a result, this firebird emerges from the carcass of the bull. So when you transform even an integrated inner masculine and inner feminine, but which is not quite at the right level yet, okay, you get access to the firebird, which is this unleashing of energy, of fire energy, Agni, right, in Hindu, Sanskrit. Ambition, drive, fire in the belly from the third chakra, Manipura, whose element is fire. And if it is not handled properly, it will burn everything, including the integration you are seeking. Okay. I mean, this is similar to like in the Odyssey, the Aeolian winds, right? Where near the beginning, he's given this bag of winds by King Aeolus. And he's basically like, this will get you home, but you need to open it at the right time. If you open it too early, right, it will actually blow you off course. So this unleashing of the firebird is exactly the same thing. You have to be ready to handle it. Otherwise, in psychological terms, they call it inflation, right? It's too much for you to handle. You had this enlightenment experience too early, you can't handle it. And instead of being a mystic, you become more of a lunatic, right? You have the energy, you just can't handle it because you're in many ways your container is not strong enough. Okay. And so, so the essence, another detail hint here, is that the whole time this crystal ball essence is already within. I mean, the bowl as it is, masculine, feminine, integrated. You're like, aren't we done? I mean, can we just stop here? Is it good enough? And the answer is, at a certain level, yes, because the crystal ball is already in the bowl, right? Well, in the bowl, in the firebird, in the egg, and the yolk of the egg, right? But the implication here is that ideally you go all the way down and get the crystal ball itself, right? Because it's like saying, well, the princess is horrible looking, but if I use the mirror, I can see the true princess is there. So why don't I just leave well enough as it is and not continue on my journey, right? If you're going to say that, you may as well say, well, the evil enchantress mother, she's really good inside, and I don't need to do any work to excavate it, right? And of course, all of these are within you. So it's like saying to yourself, well, the golden crystal ball is already within me, so that's fine. I don't need to do anything, right? And I guess the point is that you can say that. You can say that. There's no, right? Because you're like, okay, what is he going to say? But you better, because you want to achieve and have spiritual development. And my reaction is, no, you do whatever you want, right? Precisely because the crystal ball is already within you. You are the sovereign of your own life, right? You do whatever you want, right? And people will try to do this, and you still just do whatever you want. That's not what should be. That is what is. I don't care who browbeats you into believing this or that. At the end of the day, you end up doing whatever you want anyway. And that's just the state of affairs that is so, right? And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. But you do not have access to it. And the beauty of a story like this is, when I draw you this map, this treasure map of how to get to the crystal ball, and say, you don't have to do it, right? No one set this third son on a mission. He just went out and he's like, I got to get my brothers back. I don't even know. I'm just going to wander into the dark forest. I have no idea what I'm going to find, and just follow my muse, follow my bliss in a way, right? And it all ends up working out, right? No one commands him to go find the crystal ball. One beautiful little detail, just to give a sense of how richly crafted this story is, on the egg, right? The fact that it is an egg itself that holds this crystal ball essence within it. I mean, the egg is an extremely powerful symbol. I was reading some work on Eliade this past week. So if you follow me on Instagram, it's the page of text I posted like a day or two ago. This wonderful point about the symbolism of the egg in mythopoetic system, in Buddhism and other systems, which is that when you break out of the egg, right? The Buddha, I think probably in a Pali tradition, said something like, a hen lays 10 or 12 eggs, and then the first chick breaks through the first egg, right? I am the first chick, right? I'm the first one to break out of the egg. So he's the first one to enlighten and become fully aware, and then he brings everybody else out, right? So when you break out of the egg, it is a symbol of initiation or enlightenment, and you become what is known in multiple traditions as being twice born, right? Born first as a human, and then reborn from your human form into this enlightened being beyond time and space and beyond death. Like when Christ resurrected, right? He became the symbolic. It was symbolic of becoming twice born as a Christian, once as a human, and then again as beyond time and space, i.e., immortal. Right. So this is a very old human concept showing up again in the Christian system that takes it to basically say the same thing in a different way, because these patterns are intrinsic to us as humans, right? Of course, at Easter, right, in the springtime, we have the Easter egg associated with, in modern times, the Christ resurrection. So why the egg, right? Why is the egg a symbol of all this? And the egg is a symbol of all this because the egg is itself biologically a mechanism of double birth, right? The chick is born out of the mother's body first as an egg, and then it is born again as the chick breaks out of the shell. A chick is twice born, right? So in this sense, we as humans are all eggs until those of us who do break out of the shell are twice born. So this potential egg of us is in the firebird, in the bull, in the egg, is the crystal ball of full integration of inner masculine and feminine, the ideal. Pretty cool, right? So in the beginning, when we talked about it, it's like, what if you had all four powers, right? Boundary, control, protection, nourishment within yourself, not relying on anyone else, and then higher vision, and then manifestation of that higher vision out into, sort of the life of the world around you to rain down blessings on everyone, including yourself. That would be unbelievable. That would be extraordinary. Well, that is this crystal ball, right? So when you're twice born, you come into your bliss as well. But as the story says, only if it is all handled properly, or else it will destroy everything. Instead of full grandiosity into your bliss, it's just inflation into like narcissism. It's all about me. I'm ahead of you all. You all are fools. As opposed to full grandiosity in your bliss, which is I'm plugged into this thing that is like so far beyond me, right? I'm nothing. I'm like a grain of sand or just zero. But whatever, even this grain of sand is in the service of this larger thing. And I don't know how I'm going to get all this done, even in the next 6 lifetimes, but I don't know what else I'm going to do. Right? So where the self, falls away and you are just in pure action and motion. Okay. So anyway, only if it's handled properly do you get the full integration. And so it's too hot to touch, right? The bird won't let you have it. And even if you get the bird to drop it, if it hits the ground, the game's over. So how do you handle it? And this is this beautiful detail in the story. The secret to how you handle it is you call on, right, the other parts of you that were also estranged and exiled. You call them in from exile. Right? Now, in the vocabulary of how we do healing, it's not just the first lost board member you find; it's the others as well. Right? The lost board member there are siblings, brothers and sisters of the first lost board member that are down there, and you need all of them as well. Right? Not just because you want a bigger army, but because if this lost board member is your inner child, all of them, they're all your children, and I want them all, whether they are helpful or not, whether they can help me with this battle or this crisis with my career relationship. I don't care. It's not about that anymore, right? These parts, I want my liver back. I want my lungs back, not because I want to breathe. Screw that. I want my lungs back because they are my lungs. I love them without condition. They don't have to be good lungs for me to love them, right? I love them without condition. I love every part of me without condition, and I claim them, right? Claim them for what? What are you going to do with them? It's like none of your business, right? It's like, oh, why do you want to get your child back when they're lost in the grocery store, right? Are you going to try to get them into Harvard? Are they going to be a professional athlete? It's like, first of all, none of your business. And second of all, we will do whatever we want. But the first order of business is to get us all back together again. And that's what we do when we heal. Right? The root of the word healing means to become whole. So you call in all these other parts. So you call in, symbolically, the eagle, and the eagle deals with the firebird, right? This other aspect of your own inner masculine, right, deals with this next phase of transformation. And you need to call these superpowers in because this is like next level, right? In the bull, you already have this basic kind of nice, very spiritually developed integration of masculine and feminine. and we're like, no, that's great. There's nothing wrong. We can stop here. We could have been just fine with mom as the evil enchantress, just fine, right? But we're choosing to come to this level for no good reason, and then we're choosing to go beyond this level for no good reason. And then we would find, to get to this next level of our bliss and meaning and purpose in life, we need to call in even more parts of ourselves that we had lost and, pushed down out of fear, right? And then you call in the whale, and the whale sort of does his part as well. Now, what is the nature of these parts of you when they finally come back in this way? Both the eagle and the whale, when they are exiled with no vision, no direction, right? These are the parts of you that are in grief and in anger. And what happens, and we've said this ad nauseum in sort of previous sessions, when you are in grief, in exile, your grief cooks and transforms. And by the way, you learn a superpower while you're down there. Right, in the session where we talked about Hephaestus, he was thrown into the ocean by Hera, his mother, because of his crippled leg. She was just like horrified. And then in the ocean, in the underground Poseidon realm, in the realm of the whale in this case, he was fed and nurtured by the nymphs, another aspect of the feminine, right? The sort of nurturing other mirror aspect of Hera. And then while he was down there, he learned a superpower, metalworking, right? And this is the superpower that led him back to Olympus, right? To become a full Olympian. Other superpowers that you learn in grief that we have seen in stories: the power to understand the language of the birds, the powers to play music, to sing your unique song, right? Et cetera, et cetera. Here, all the while, these two brothers have been in exile in the spirit realm and in the underworld realm. In the spirit realm, you can connect and negotiate with the firebird. You have a spirit side that can like connect with the firebird. In the water realm, you can do what a whale can do, which is put out fire with the power of the waves. Okay, so it is part of the equation or formula or physics, right, of the archetypal pattern of coming into wholeness, is that you will have grieved in the other realms. And the superpowers you have acquired in those periods of grief in your life are critical to this like final moment of integration. Not final, but highest moment of integration. Okay. To put it simply, said another way, there is no healing without grief. There is no spiritual development without grief. There is no final reconciliation of your inner masculine and feminine. There is no crystal ball without grief, period. I didn't make the rules. I'm just telling you the way it is. I don't know what else to tell you, right? There is no healing without grief. If you say, I want to heal without grief, or it's like, I've already grieved, right? I've already done therapy for 30 years. Like, aren't we done? Are we done? And I don't want to do anymore, right? You are the giants fighting over the cap. Okay. If none of the therapy or yoga or meditation or drinking or workaholism or serial relationships, one person after another, or nor anything else has brought you into grief, then you are not done. You are not done. And that's okay. Right? This is sacred space. So I'm not saying, oh, you better get off your backside and start grieving. It's like, no. I'm just describing the pattern as given by this story and so many stories we've done in the past 2 years, right? If none of these things that you try actually bring you into grief, then you're not done. There is no crystal ball. And if you're like, you know what, you keep your stupid crystal ball. I'm not doing that. I don't want no grief, no crystal ball. I'm fine with that. Then you're back with the giants. Then you're back with the enchantress. And for me, my opinion is that's totally okay. right? You have these people who are like, they live their whole lives, they're still angry on their deathbed, and they pass into, the next phase or the next realm. And they haven't done any, they haven't grieved, they haven't done, and I'm like, that's okay. They're still sovereign, right? There's nothing wrong with you if you don't do this stuff. But if you have a map that's presented to you and you're like, oh, I could do this, but here are the costs, here's what I have to do, you can just choose whether you want to do it, right? You don't have to do it. You don't, strictly speaking, have to do anything because you are the sovereign of your life. Okay. But onto the treasure map. So, in many ways, right? If you're like, oh, the point of all these things was to, in part, bring me into grief, and that would have done it. Looking back, often a person who's gone through a lot of this will realize, gosh, if I was only less fancy, less imaginative, I would have just been dumb, like the third brother or third sibling in all these stories. I would have just been dumb and unintellectual and unclever. And I would have just sit my ass there after, my parents, left me or didn't treat me right or whatever. I would have just sat there and grieved for a year and just done nothing. And then just being dumb enough not to be fancy and having grieved for like 6 months or a year, I might have saved myself 20 or 30 years of going around in circles doing all this other fancy stuff. Right? Looking back, you realize, oh my gosh, I could have done that. But in reality, nobody does that because nobody is actually stupid enough to just do that. Right? There's always the next shiny thing to try. Yoga, ayahuasca, right? Retreats, or working this next career. Oh, I'll switch from this career into this career. That'll do it. Oh, I won't marry this person. I'll marry this other person. That'll do it. There's always the next shiny thing to try. And I'm not saying, oh, aren't you stupid? I'm like, no, that's what we all do. I do it too. Everyone does it. This is humanity. We all do it. We all do it. Even in the story, it has to happen in this circumambulatory roundabout way. And that's okay, right? It's like we love ourselves as we are. I love humanity. I love humanity as it is, right? Warts and all. So anyway, at the end of the day, knowing how to grieve becomes a powerful element in all this. And it's really only difficult to even step into figuring out how to grieve because it's so terrifying, right? Grief is the scariest thing in all of this. Okay. So anyway, that's enough about grief. This crystal ball story, strictly speaking, is not a story about grief. In this story, the way it's touched on is at the critical point when you're going after the crystal ball, you have it, just beyond your fingertips. The final thing is, and the way the story is, it's like, yeah, of course you will have already grieved in the other realms, in the whale realm and in the eagle realm, in order to be able to handle the firebird, to handle this level. It goes without saying, if you haven't done grief and you don't have a brother who's a whale and you don't have a part of you that has spent time in the sky, in the intellect, in the spiritual realm, then there's no way you're going to get this crystal ball. But there are other stories where we focus on what happens in the underwater realm and in the sky realm. We're not focusing on that here because the story would be way too long. But yeah, assuming all that's in place, then you go in, here's what happens, and then you get the crystal ball. Okay. And the stakes are high. If the egg breaks, everything burns. And as the story literally says, all will be for naught, all will be in vain. Right, so what I'm saying is not that, oh, you better grieve or else. It's that sooner or later the grief will happen in some form. Right? If you hit the wall and the egg burns everything, there will be another cycle where you get another shot, right? In this life or the next, however. Right. So if you're faced with grief and you avoid it and bypass it, spiritual bypassing, all the rest of it, you're not a bad person. Right? You're not a weak person. You're just human. You're just human. But be that as it may, the pattern given by this story says that you can't finish the cycle without grief. You don't have to finish the cycle. If you would like to complete the process, you do need to do it. It's just the physics of the thing, right? Now, some people, as we've said, grief is so painful and scary that all this other stuff, right? So if you don't grieve, you're going to be in depression, addiction, spiritual bypassing, drinking, endless, that will create more pain and grief. And even faced with that, they're like, fine, I'll take it because the grief is too much. I'll do 30 years of this just to avoid that. And it's like, okay, fine. They have their own sovereign choice. But for me, in my experience, most people don't know that this is the choice they're making because these traditions, these mythopoetic traditions, just have been lost. Well, we live in a very profane world, right? And if you knew, right, that drinking, for instance, to avoid all this pain would create 3 or 4 more cycles of pain, right at the top of the story, you'd just be like, yeah, I'm just going to snip all that. I'm not going to do that. This is going to be painful, equivalent to 10 rounds of that, but at least I'll be done in a year if I survive, and that's what I would like to do, right? So for me, it is this. So the reason these fairy stories are so powerful and such human like treasures, right, of human culture and human tradition, is that if you're able to read them in this mythopoetic way, they give you these operating manuals. So not so that you better do this or else, but so that you can make your choices. You can make your choices. You're like, well, compared to all that, grief is not sounding quite as bad. And can you tell me more about how to actually do that, right? For instance, when I teach about grief, I teach using a story called The Devil's Sooty Brother, which is another Grimm story. And part of the thing you realize from that story is that even the dark parts of you, even the scary parts of you, even the devil part of you, right? Even the dark parts of you are parts of you. Right? When you say I'm the devil's sooty brother, he's the devil, and yeah, I'm his sooty brother because I've been down in the caves with him like these past 7 years, right? And when you come out, one of the patterns of the devil's sooty brother is that you come out and then you go back down into grief twice, right? But the second time is different because the second time, instead of being terrified, you're like, no, yeah, I go down there all the time. I know it like the back of my hand. I have a key to the underworld, right? And you can go in and out anytime to get more gold, to get more whatever. It's like the basement of your house, no matter how scary, is still your house. It belongs to you. And you can be afraid of it, or you can go down, get a bottle of wine, get supplies or whatever. It is your place, right? Just because it's dark and scary doesn't make it not yours. And as the sovereign of yourself, of your house, you decide what you do with that, right? And so for me, as the storyteller and healer here, my role is just to give you the pattern to the best of my ability, and then you make your own choices, right? Now, for me, when I'm looking at a map like this, it's obvious what I would choose, right? On a good day, right? I would choose the crystal ball. I would choose to go all the way. On a good day. But I don't know what would make sense for anybody else, right? So back to the story, there's no managing the Firebird without the superpowers you got from grieving in other realms, right? And the story doesn't go into how the eagle got its power and how the whale got so good at like putting waves onto the shore. Those are different stories. Like the Hephaestus story covers something like that, okay? And we have told other stories in other sessions about the mechanics of grief and what happens when you go down into it. But the point from this story is that even if you kill the bull and got the cap and transcended, duality and all this, all will be for naught unless you also can call on these powers you have developed in the other realms through grief. Okay. Now, the final lovely touch is the way you get the enchanter to release the spell, right? The enchanter is an aspect of you too. The three sons go back to their estranged father, enchanter, the husband, who is like imprisoning the princess, who is also the enchantress, right? It's like this double Ouroboros of the fire drake dragon biting the tail of the serpent, and the serpent biting the tail of the dragon, right? The circle, this double Ouroboros, masculine and feminine, right? These are the giants holding each other down, right? Now, at this phase of the story, you have attained the crystal ball. Right? You are fully integrated. You have managed it with the power of the three realms. You've done the grief. And the final stroke to release everything is not to take the ball and like shoot lightning at the enchanter or hit him over the head and kill him with it, right? It's not like that at all. You have full integration. So you just walk up to him and you show him the ball. And he's like, oh, shoot, good one. Well, you're the king now. The castle, here's the keys. The thermostat's over there. The bathroom's over there. Garbage day is like Thursday. He's like giving you the whole thing. And at the end, there's this feeling of like, thank goodness I'm relieved of this duty now. Right? So what this final touch is saying is that the key mechanism at the final step is just awareness. When you show him the crystal ball, he's done. Awareness itself dissolves the conflict. Right? Even now, you listening to this story, my explanations about all of these things, your awareness is increasing. And the awareness will, in some of you, I'm sure, be releasing all of these insights. In other words, the awareness itself is part of the healing. Or because we say healing is wholeness, bringing all these parts back to you. Well, when I shine a light or show you a map to say, yeah, there's one part, and you're like, oh. And when you see it, you're just like, you just grab it and bring it to you. It's like when you look in the mirror and you realize you're slouching, you just, there's no issue. There's no process or like, 90-day sort of fitness plan. You just straighten up. Or if I see a bit of lint on my, I don't even think, I just like brush it off, right? So this is another hint given by the story, this insight around the mechanism of the final ultimate stroke is simply your awareness that all of this has happened in your life. The mantra we use around here is all the time is that awareness equals choice. Awareness equals choice. Okay, so now he gets the princess in her true form. The spell is lifted. All the masculines have been resolved. The enchanter, the three sons, the full cycle is done. And you get the sort of true form of the inner feminine, which is this emerging princess, truly beautiful. You no longer need the mirror. So in that sense, the enchantress then doesn't die either, right? The ugly, evil form you saw simply sort of evaporates so that you see the true form, right? So the enchantress also is like, I haven't changed. The enchantress hasn't changed. You just don't need a mirror to see me anymore. And so that's the ideal. So then when you have this full integration, we have the ideal that we talked about at the beginning of the session, where you have the four functions: boundary protection, okay, nourishment from within, higher vision, and then the power of manifesting that higher vision. That's the ideal. And that's encapsulated in this sort of image and quest around the crystal ball. Okay, so those are the notes I had. Gary, do you want to come back up and add any other comments? Hello. Hi.
Okay. Thank you. Wow, that was quite a detailed map.
Yeah, this is a long one. It's a detailed map.
Yeah, it's a detailed map. And what struck me particularly was that when you mentioned how at each stage you have the choice of saying, I'm going to stop here because, everything's fine as it is. And that will be okay, right? It will be your sovereign choice. So that it's very reassuring to hear that at one point, because you know that any point in your life, you don't have to kind of wag your finger at yourself that you're not doing the work, or
Right.
you're not healing, right? Or this is not how things should be, and you should be better than this. So at any given point, everything's okay. So you can choose to stop, right? And the question then comes is, okay, then why do you choose to go on? Why do you seek the crystal ball? And for me, at various points in my life, it's been, if I don't go on, then there is a life force that blocks the path of my bliss, because it's exiled, because it just doesn't show up where it needs to show up. And that's kind of like a deal breaker for me. That I want the bliss to flow, so I don't want any blocks. So I'll go on. But if I'm tired, or if at any point I see no problem with what's going on, I can stop. And that's hugely reassuring, because the general message that we get around healing is that you must heal. And
you better heal or else.
Yeah, and you must become a better person, whatever that means. So that's one thing. And the other thing that comes up in the story makes a particular point of repeating, as I noted as I was telling the story, is that it actually brings out the point that this is a long process. There's many iterations of it, many cycles of it, in terms of the first time. It says the young man walked around quite a bit before he actually came to the forest. And even then, he didn't know where to go. Right? So that is one. And then this next part is, he gets this magical wishing cap, and he actually goes to the gate of the castle. And he goes in and he opens every room in the castle. And it is the last room where he finds the princess. Right? So that's another thing. And the third thing is when he finally goes down to see the bull, and he encounters the bull, it is a long fight. The story kind of glides over it. It's a long fight, and then he finally manages to put the sword into its body. So there is like a lot of things that happen, but the story just says, okay, it's a map, so we're not going to go into details. But this could take years and decades.
Right.
So, yeah.
And it reminds me of something in one of the workshops we did last month. There was an advisee who said something like, so this really makes it clear that this is by something like responsibility, and I was like, well, that's okay if that's what you think, but just to clarify, that's not what I'm saying, right? And what I'm saying is that if it's not your responsibility, it's your sovereignty, right? You decide what you want to do. And if you say, I'm going to take on the responsibility to like undo all my ancestors' sort of, atrocities or whatever, that's fine. You can do that, right? But it's your sovereign choice to take on that responsibility, right? So I can imagine some advisees now in the audience saying, oh my gosh, this is such a long thing, and healing is such a long journey, and I've already done so much, and I'm so tired, and yet I have to, because it's my responsibility to be my best self and whatever. And I just want to emphasize that, no, it's not. So what I emphasize is that it is your sovereignty to decide whether even to subscribe to the worldview of a map like this. And if it's too long, it's like you just go shop for a shorter map, maybe, I don't know. Or decide, I'm about here, and I'm okay here for like forever. And then maybe something like a muse or something will come and prod you forward. But if you're like, I don't I don't respond to fear, threat, and control prods anymore. At least with regard to my deeper self. Right. So if I'm driving and the traffic light turns red, that's fear, threat, and control. I better stop or else I'm going to get a ticket. Right. I'm fine stopping at the red light. Right. Because that's just, just sort of the mechanics of the world. Right. But within my own inner self, right, to hear a story like this and to still be going like this to myself. So you better keep doing, you better do this, you better read this book or whatever. It's okay if that's what you want to do, but you do that as your own sovereign choice. Said another way, you don't have to do that. You don't have to do anything. And if you don't want the crystal ball, because it's like if it costs that much, then forget it. That's totally okay. That's totally okay. Sovereignty is like number one. Realizing that, awareness of that, and then you have all the choices before you, and you do whatever you want.
Right. And here's a very interesting question that I thought, might as well bring up here, which is, how do you find out what part is suppressed when you don't know that part? So it's kind of like a paradox.
Oh yeah. So when we do healing, there's all kinds of techniques to sort of triangulate. And it's like finding a black hole. It's like where all the light disappears. And it seems like there's nothing there. It's like, okay, where it seems like there's nothing there, send the probe there. So typically when you find it and you realize it, the first time it's like presented to you in 7-day healing or however you do it, people's first reaction is like, oh yeah, that, no, I know, but what about the lost board member? And I'm like, no, that is the lost board member. And you're like, I'm sorry, what? That is the lost, I mean, given all the signals, that's textbook lost board member. And you're like, no, come on. It's not even dismissive. It's just like, no, come on. No, really, come on. I'm paying you all this money. Let's go. And I'm like, I mean, you can get a refund if you want, but I'm just, it's that. And so, it's typically the part of you that you don't even see as a part of you, because it's so, to you at least, it's so despicable. And there are a number of exercises we use to sort of get you to sort of gently, slowly, without tears, to sort of start to see that from a veil, and then you decide how fast you want to get closer to it. But it's basically like, it's the thing that either you were directly told or you read the writing on the wall. So maybe I was the favored child, right? And my stupid cousin was like the black sheep of the family. And no one ever threatened me, but I'm seeing like what they all like heap on him. And I'm like, okay, I guess whatever 3 things I associate with him, I need to like be the anti that. And then I get to be golden boy, right? Even that, it's like, whatever those 3 things were that you stuffed down, it's different for everyone. I mean, there are patterns, but it's different for everyone. Those are your lost board members. Right, so the thing that you would, so there's a classic exercise we do called the magic wand exercise. So if I could wave a magic wand and you could change any one thing about you. Oh, I'm so selfish, I'm so like tired, I'm so like, I don't look the way I want to look, I'm not as smart as dad always wanted me to be. Whatever. I wave a magic wand right now. And when I wave it, you can change any one thing about yourself, but only one. But guaranteed it will change. And And to sweeten the deal, we'll make the change retroactive to about 2 weeks before you were born. So no one, it's not like plastic surgery, they'll see before and after. No one will know the before. It'll just between us, you, me, and the wall.
Yeah.
Okay. No one will ever know. And you can quietly just like bury this thing about you forever. And your whole life will be different. But you only get to choose one thing, and you have to choose right now. So zoop, zoop, I wave my magic wand, abracadabra, make your choice now, or give up your shot. Make your choice now. Whatever has just popped into your head, that is your lost living.
Yeah.
And your first reaction, that your $20 or €20 or wherever you are, that will be like, what? No, come on, no, really. Let's be serious. What's the real answer? And I'm like, I just gave it to you.
Yeah.
And then what you do with that is, right, the next step. You're like, oh my gosh, if I become aware of it, if I don't become aware of it, I'm gonna unknowingly hurt others. It's like, yeah, you're gonna hurt other people no matter what. I'm not saying don't be sensitive to it, but it's just like, if you're like, I'm just like, well, so what if you hurt other people? Well, that's a bad and morality and it's like, yeah, I get that, but it's like, what if I could guarantee that if you never were aware of this, you would never hurt another person again? What if I could take that threat away? Right? There's no threat. There's no consequence to like not bringing this part of you back again. It serves no function. You have no advantage. Bringing it back will not prevent you from being a bad person. You'll be perfectly fine. You'll just be this like golfer, tennis player, traipsing through life. Everything's going to be fine. At that point, would you agree to forsake it? Right? It's like, if I need to threaten you to bring it back, even after you bring it back, you will still only be at the level of giants or the bull. Right? That next level of fully integrated crystal ball is like, it doesn't matter what happened. This is post-grief at the crystal ball level. Right? I don't have to do anything. I may unknowingly, if I don't know, then what am I going to do? Are you going to threaten me and put me in jail now for things that I'm not even aware of? It's like, how far will you go to like wield threat over yourself? And at a certain point, when you've been at the bottom of the ocean long enough, it's like, do whatever you want. I'm not being defiant. It's just like, do whatever you want.
Yeah.
And then you come up and you realize the pearl was in your pocket the whole time. And you're like, oh, that's nice. That's cool. And you don't wreak vengeance. You go back to the enchanter and you're like, here, look at what I found. And he's like, finally. The castle's yours. Take over. I'm going on vacation. And everything just kind of flows. And the key here is, so I keep saying your sovereign power, right? Another way of saying what I mean by that is that a true sovereign is sacred, right? It's like divine mandate, right? And what that means is sacred, i.e. devoid of fear, threat, or control. So under your own sovereign power, when I'm not threatening myself, right? So maybe I will be a nicer person if I heal, right? That's not the reason. Right? With no threat, no gain, no loss, no consequence. What is my sovereign choice? In the profane world, from the moment we're born, trains us to like not think like that.
If you think about it, that is one of the reasons we also suppress our own inner truth, our own voices. When we say, if I speak my truth, if I am true to myself, it will hurt so and so and so. Because other people won't like it. My family won't like it. My parents will be disappointed. My The society I live in won't accept it, and that's why I won't be true to myself, right? So that's,
Yeah.
It's the same logic that we use to actually suppress a part of ourselves.
Yeah.
So it's part of the same kind of threat, set of things that we tell ourselves.
Yeah, and there's a truth and logic to that.
Yeah.
I'm not saying like say the truth to everyone and like break all this glass necessarily.
Yeah.
Right. The solution for the third son was not to go out, sharpen a stake in the forest, come back and stab the mother. Right. That it's a little bit less linear and less phallic and more circumambulatory than that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there are details of the mechanism along the way, but I think the main thing for our purposes is that, put it this way, the more time you spend in sacred space like this,
Mm-hmm.
the more you'll get the feeling of what it feels like to not be threatened.
Yeah.
Hopefully we do an okay job of like not threatening anyone, not mentioning, not selling stuff, right? Where it's like, oh, but if you really want to do it, you'll buy this thing, right? That's later in email. But in sacred space, we don't do that. So, and the point is so that we remember what it tastes like and what it feels like. So when you're out listening and reading books or anything, when people start to finger wag, you feel it immediately because you've developed this palate for the taste of the sacred. And when someone, a politician or a guru or someone starts doing this, you just naturally like spit it back out. You're like, what is this? Not because it's wrong or a bad teaching necessarily, but it's like, as the sovereign, right? If I'm the sovereign and you're the philosopher trying to train me like Aristotle to be the philosopher king, yeah, I can take it, but you have to talk to me in a certain way.
Yeah.
Right? You can't be threatening me. That's not gonna, because I'll just like send you off to jail. And so all of us have this sovereign power. And I believe that in our own sovereign power, we will start to move toward our natural bliss, because it's like higher vision and manifestation. And I mean, the ultimate scenario, right? And if we never get there, that's okay. Is that everyone in the world, 100 generations from now, is following their bliss. So the only people who are plumbers are the ones for whom plumbing is their bliss. The only people who are like garbage collectors are the ones for whom garbage collecting is their bliss, or some aspect of it, right? And you're like, well, what about this? What about that? It's like, well, I don't know. It's hard for me as like an econ major from Harvard, right, to wrap his mind around that. But it's like, if everyone is in their own sovereign power and they're not being threatened by fear, threat, and control, they will naturally do the thing they love to do for no good reason. And we're so far from that. I can't even imagine what a world looks like. But moving like 3 snail's inches in that direction when it's like 1,000 miles away is blissful for me. So I just do it. I don't think we're in danger of like breaking anything.
Yeah. So do you want to share the reflection question, the exercise?
Okay. Yeah, let's do that. Okay, so we'll just suggest a quick exercise. Again, no fear, threat, or control, only if you want. But often after these stories, you're like, oh, I want to spend more time with this question. How do I think about it? One thing is you can just watch the replay. Like, people do that all the time. But another is an exercise. So you do this quietly on your own. Budget about 5 or 10 minutes by yourself with a journal, some pencil and paper. And the prompt here is for your own inner masculine and inner feminine, right? Your own power of boundary protection and manifestation, and your own power of self-nurturing, self-nourishment, and higher vision. What is the state of yourself right now? Is inner masculine over dominant, holding down the inner feminine? Right, so you're doing a lot of things, you're busy all the time, but you have no higher vision. Is your inner feminine over dominant? So you're nurturing others, but you have no boundaries, right? You're starving yourself even as you're nurturing others. You have no protection. You're a people pleaser. And maybe you have vision, but without inner masculine, you have no ability to manifest your higher vision. You're a dreamer, castles in the sky, nothing ever gets done. So like in the boundaries workshop last month, we went into like this whole 2x2 matrix of like inner feminine dominant, inner masculine dominant in men and women, and then sort of the non-binary kind of case as well. So there are a ton of scenarios where inner feminine is dominant, inner masculine is dominant. They're both co-holding each other down, in some way, in different ways, and what this is like, right? So the quick exercise for this session is, how is it going with your inner feminine and inner masculine? Are they working together? Are they working against each other? And if you're like, I don't even know how to visualize that, then if you can remember dreams in the recent past, right? The masculine and feminine figures in your dreams will tell parts of the story as well. If you dream about your dad or your grandmother or your daughter or your son or your nephew, what they're doing in the dreams, you can read in a similar way to how we've read these stories. And it will give you clues, little breadcrumbs here and there, and over time, the fuller picture will become more clear. Okay, so that's the exercise, and we're over time, I apologize, but now I'll go ahead and close the session. So our next session is next month. Let me just drop the link for that. You can sign up now. It's free, invite friends, only if you want, no pressure. And I hope to see you there. And for this session, we have now come to the end of our sacred space. So I will close sacred space by saying that I hereby close this session of our shared sacred space. Thank you for holding this space with me and with us. And thank you for sharing the nourishment, the emotional nourishment, and the spiritual nourishment of this shared sacred space altogether. I give you my blessing. Go in peace, bestowed with blessing, free of fear, free of threat, and free of the undue control of others. Have a great day, have a great week, and a great month, and I will see you all in the next session. Happy Sunday, and Happy New Year, everyone. Thank you.